What's up? This is Music Production, Cybersecurity, and Linux 2020. Continuing the trend from the Linux 2019 episode. Because it's no longer a podcast. I took down the podcast, I think, sometime last year from iTunes and the other podcast aggregators, however you want to call it. It was interesting. That was pretty fun to learn, especially learning how to do that with WordPress. I think that was the Blueberry plugin, and I was surprised to see that everything was basically driven by an RSS feed. You know, make sure the image is in there, the right metadata is in there for each post, the image for that podcast is in the RSS feed. All of that was pretty interesting to see. But for those of you that may be curious about doing that yourself, you can also use SoundCloud last time I checked. And I'm pretty sure there's got to be other ways to do it in the other CMSs like Drupal, Joomla, all that other stuff. But anyways, yeah, changing up music production, cybersecurity, and Linux because I'm not doing a lot of playing around with different open source software anymore. Not much compared to when I first started doing all of this stuff a couple years ago. You know, I used to get on a new Linux distro and install just about anything that came to mind, an app for just about anything that I could think of to see what happens. You know, just learning open source software. What's the norm? What's the cool stuff? What do people that do this use when they opt for something free? You know, there's always the GIMP for Photoshop. There's been the OpenShot and kdenlive for what is Sony Vegas and Adobe Premiere for video stuff. For audio, there's always been Audacity. It may not seem great to do a bunch of audio stuff with, but it works. It does the job for a lot of basic stuff. So, music. Second album should be out by the time y'all hear this. And that's been my milestone for 2020. I got a single up there where I say a little bit about dealing with coronavirus, and another single that summarizes my 2020. And I use my Kalimba still finding different ways to use the Kalimba. Just enjoyed it. I like the sound of it. I like the treble in it and the natural ways, the natural vibe and sound, the sonic sound of how it adds a great acoustic quality to a track, even if it's not doing much, just because of how every pluck is so different. And I had also done, just because that came to mind, I had done another YouTube video, because my YouTube channel has been very quiet. So I've been spending the entire month of December, or I should say, most of December 2020, trying to make up for that. So I did a video, random, in kdenlive, with 4 special times from the first album, where it was prominently a Kalimba in there. I've been playing with the Cajun. That's in a a couple tracks on that second album as well. Another instrument. It's fun to add because of the acoustic qualities it adds immediately. Don't really have to do a bunch of stuff to try to make a drum sound live. You just do it on a Cajun. Going back to doing videos for YouTube. I've done a couple for some underground tracks that I did back in 2006, 7, 5. I think I did one for, I got one for D that'll come up within the next few weeks at the time of recording. I already put one out for Headbangaz. Probably do some others within the next month. And for some of those, I got curious. I wanted to see how I could switch up the quality in the type of videos I did. I usually use FFMPEG to do any type of audio spectrum stuff, and then I'll edit it in kdenlive. But I got curious because all the videos you see on YouTube, I think the best example I can give is Majestic Casual. But just think of a beautiful picture, and then in the center there is some bubble, an image, circle, and then there's an audio spectrum around it, and then it pumps every time the kick hits. You know, it looks cool. I mean, that's what we're used to seeing. And I was curious, how can I do that? And I ended up stumbling across stuff telling me how to do it in FL Studio. It's a plugin. It's natively installed called ZGame Editor Visualizer. It's not open source, but it exists. I already have it. I didn't know I had it, so I played with it. And it's pretty easy. I will link to the YouTube video I used to learn how to do everything I did in the Headbangaz A Girl video. I think that was the first one I did. I did all of the tricks that I learned from that video in that video. I'll make sure I add that note. But it was fun. It wasn't hard. There were a couple of things here and there I had to keep in mind. Biggest thing was once I figured out how to put in the effect in the plugin to pump the image, the logo, and the audio spectrum. If it's set to a certain parameter, the parameter updates live in the plugin. You can see the slider for that parameter in whatever other effect. You know, so the logo image may have a saturation or a hue, toggle or a slider that changes the color. And if the song is playing and I'm zipping through the parameters to make sure I get the right parameter for the pumping effect to change in that image, I could end up screwing up all of those other settings in real time, because it's not going to say, okay, well, you were using the pumping, so it's going to go right back to what it was doing, where it was at before the pump had moved the slider. It's going to stay wherever it was, and that frustrated me at first. Once I realized that, I'd stop and make sure I had the right parameter and hover over each option to see the number in the corner and make sure I'm choosing the right one. Or I just click on the pumping option and choose the right number in the drop down, so I'm not zipping through with my scroll mouse or arrows. But it was fun. It was pretty cool to be able to see how easy it was to make a video like that. Just take a random image, put it on the background, take a logo, round it, find some type of audio spectrum effect that fits the vibe of the music and the vibe you're trying to set with the whole video. Add some text here and there. And then I had to learn how to fade out. I haven't played with that too much. I looked into the best ways of doing that. So for now, in the second video I did like that in ZGame Editor was I used a fade to black somewhere. No, I don't think it was fade to black. I think I used an automation clip because you put the ZGame Editor visualizer in the master bus as an effects. So I created an automation clip in the FX bus for ZGame Editor, and I would just have it go from 0 to 100 in the first couple seconds to fade the video in, and then the same thing, fade it out at the end. That worked. I don't think it fades out the text within the video, though. I think it just does everything else. I think it depends on the type of text block that you use inside of ZGame Editor. But anyways, it was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. So, cybersecurity. I don't have too much to say about this. I got a blog that I'll be posting long before this episode releases, where I talk about a bunch of stuff regarding cybersecurity, stuff that I hadn't talked about before on my blog. But that's going to slowly change. I'll be talking about that. I plan to talk a little bit more about InfoSec, InfoSecurity, cybersecurity, securing your website, stuff from your PC, because everyone needs to know some of this stuff. Once you have a website, there's certain things you need to understand. You need to understand the strength, how strong your password may be. You need to understand what it means to have to deal with denial of service. You need to understand who to go to and how to deal with those situations. Those issues don't just go away. Yeah, and another thing in 2020, I read about I found out about the data breach investigation report, the DBIR by Verizon. So I read that. It was a long read, but it was very interesting. It talked about trends for among the cyber attacks throughout the world within the last few years. The biggest takeaways that I got from it is phishing is everywhere. You have to pay attention to who's trying to add you on social media, who's telling you to click what link, who's sending you this email, who's calling you, who's texting you. Pay attention, and if something doesn't look right, find another method to contact the person that you think it is that should be trying to contact you, and make sure before you touch the link, before you open it, before you say yes, you can follow me on social media, etc. Because phishing is there. It's happening. Phishing, spear phishing, vishing, which is calling. What was the other one? Smishing. Text message. They're all happening a lot. And beside phishing is typo-squatting or cyber-squatting. I think Google has a couple examples, has a couple domains that they registered based on how people generally misspell google.com. And that's basically to avoid that Typo-squatting and cybersquatting. Because there are websites out there, if you use the wrong TLD or top level domain, so .com, because it's not everything isn't .com. Sometimes it's .net. Sometimes it's what's another one? .ch, .com, .ph. There's a lot of them out there, and there's somebody with interesting names such as .music, .sarah, I think is one. And you need to make sure that you're putting the right one in there, because there are websites out there that couldn't get the .com for their domain, so they had these .net or .org. That's another one. And then there's .gov, but they're pretty strict on who can use that. Government entities. And a .us, that's another one. So if you're trying to get to website.net, well, let's say you put in website and press Control and Enter. I think in certain browsers that automatically adds www and .com at the end. You don't know what you're going to. You might be told that this domain doesn't exist, but you could also get sent to some mess. Some mess that you may not be able to just clean up. For those of you with websites, you can check out upguard.com. And again, going with what I just said, no need to type that in. Don't just type that in assuming it's right. Search it. Just search for UpGuard. Go on your favorite search engine, your Google, DuckDuckGo, start page, whatever, and type in upguard.com. See what comes up in the search engine instead of trying to go directly to it. That way you can see what domains may be close to yours. And lastly, for the DBIR, password management. I used to give a lot of people crap for having simple passwords. Anytime I had to reset a password for someone and they'd ask for something super simple, and I try to tell them, hey, you should try to use something at least with some upper and lowercase letters, some numbers, some special characters. And, of course, many times I was blown off, but I try to at least tell them, hey, this could be pretty important. You're not gonna always know when it's important. Get a password manager. Get an app that helps you manage your passwords. There's LastPass, that's popular. There's 1Password. I've heard a bit about Bitwarden, KeePass. Just get a dedicated app that helps you manage your passwords. Don't just use a browser. Don't use the browser, is what I would say. If you're using the browser, it should be something that's not important. But again, that can become subjective pretty quickly, because sometimes what isn't important to us could be very important for somebody that's trying to get something that we don't realize is accessible with those user credentials. But get a password manager. You can use haveibeenpawing.com to see if the password you use has been added to some rainbow table, which basically means a huge text file that cyber attackers use to automatically bot through and try to brute force to log into something. And you just type your email address in there and see if your email address has been added to any list of cyber attacks. And they could be eye-opening. I told a couple people about it, and I had someone tell me they had quite a long list associated with that email address. I told them, hey, it's a good time to change the password at the very least. Maybe you want to just get a new email address. Just start anew. Don't make the same mistakes. Live and learn. We all make mistakes. It's all good. Oh, and have I been pawned isn't spelled the way it sounds. If it's missing an A. But again, look it up. Go in the search engine and type have I been pawned? Have I been conned? I wonder what that is. Yeah, type in have I been pawned, see what comes up. It's a pretty interesting site. You can learn a lot of stuff up there too. And I think if you click around, you can find the source material and see what's in those files that are basically being queried to answer whether your email address or password is in there. Interesting. Two interesting tools. And this is going to be it's more of a kind of a transition into me talking about the Linux and open source software stuff in a minute. I've known about ClamAV, antivirus scanner for Linux. I've known about that for a good while. I got curious and I found another one for web servers called ImunifyAV. I forgot who makes them. I think it's Cloud Linux. I think they make it. But it's an elegant looking tool, but it's a freemium. ClamAV is free. It can do a lot, but if you have a cPanel server, you ain't gonna be able to do much inside of cPanel WHM. I think ClamAV in WHM, all you can do is say you can select what the cPanel users can do, what they can scan, whether they can scan the entire directory, email, or the home directory. And then you have to go to the cPanel account to actually do the scan. But the ClamAV program is still there. So you log in to the terminal. All of the options are still there. You can do everything to set it up as a remote scanner that receives scan requests from other applications on the server or from other servers. You can set up a port for it to do that. You can run stuff, cron jobs and stuff to make it do things automatically. All of that is still there. You just can't do it in cPanel. Can't do it in the GUI. Immunify seems to be looking to take over by allowing you to do those things. WHM has ImunifyAV. Once you install that on a cPanel VPS or cPanel dedicated server, you can go into WHM and you can do a lot of the scans. You can set automated scans. You can see what files have been listed for quarantine. A lot of interesting stuff. And then the cPanel user, in WHM, you can set whether the cPanel user can look at that stuff on their own. But again, they have CLI commands as well. And it's both pretty interesting to see. I'd like to see more people talk about the comparison between the two. Because I couldn't imagine, I don't even think Immunify will have much of a good use case on a Linux PC. Not sure. But not sure many would care if you could. But it's an interesting option to see. I'd like to see those comparisons from more people to see what other people are trying to do with each. So for those of you running a cPanel server, check that out. Well, a cPanel VPS at least. Those with cPanel and WHM. Or an unmanaged. I should at least mention that. If you have an unmanaged server, both of them have CLI options. So you can still run it there. Check that out. Lastly, Linux and open source software. I think I talk a lot about Ardour a lot, but I just don't say anything. And this won't be an exception. I've been tinkering around with Ardour more, and the workflow is it's similar. It feels familiar. I haven't had too many issues that I could say trying to do certain things. It's just learning how Ardour does things. But I don't have any issues except for one, with how working Ardour, the preferences and the options for using it, they all seem pretty well thought out, laid out. The user experience is good. I enjoy learning things in Ardour. The one issue that I have as of now is I haven't figured out how to easily slow down and change the pitch for a track to easily make a chopped and screwed remix. I've seen the option to slow down the entire track, but that was temporarily. Once you could play it and move a dial to slow it down, but once the track stops, it goes right back to zero. I probably have to look and see if there's a way to automate that to keep it at that certain spot. But then the question becomes, if things get glitchy, how bad does everything get with the chopping of everything? I've seen options to change the pitch, but I don't want to just change the pitch. I need it to be as simple as I have the track and I change the semitones on it and suddenly it's lower. That's what I was looking for. But I have to play more. I haven't played very much with that. So I don't want you hearing this and thinking, well, you can't do that in Ardour. I'm not sure. I haven't figured it out yet. But if I figure it out, I'll probably start doing that instead. Because that'd be more fun. A random bit to throw in. When I was in college, I enjoyed using Taiga. Taiga. Yeah. Taiga.io. It's a Kanban web application. I think somebody somewhere was talking about Trello. And then at one point I said, well, I'm going to look into the options. And I found Taiga. And I said, I like Taiga. I like this. Taiga seems a lot more user-friendly. It's a lot simpler. And I use that in every group project in college that would benefit from having a Kanban. Now, I should probably reel it back. A Kanban is it's a way of visualizing tasks for project management, agile project management. So imagine you have your computer screen or a whiteboard, doesn't matter. And you have columns. Let's say there's an idea fairy, but there's always an idea fairy, right? There's a ready to work. There's an assigned column. Now these are columns. So you have the ideas column. Then you have approved to assign column. Then there's maybe a assigned to someone or in progress column. Then there's a review, approved, and archive column. So you have these columns of different stages for a task. So You got a new website. Someone needs to install an SSL. Someone needs to install this antivirus or this firewall and configure it. Those are individual tasks that'll be in different columns at each time. And they're super easy. I think they're great because it visualizes the progress. You can look at it. Anyone can look at it and say, this is where this task is. You can see who is it assigned to, and depending on the web application, you can usually look and see the man hours. How long is this? What has this person done with this? How long has it been in this column? Is it a part of another task or a agile sprint, right? And it's super easy to understand the workflow around it. Taiga, I liked it because it was simplified. It wasn't a bunch of conversations nested up under each other like Trello. Trello, I think, is still the industry standard. I think Monday and Basecamp, there were other ones that had been talked about, but Trello, I think, is still the industry standard. My issue with Trello is Trello has so much stuff going on that it's easy to get bogged down, I think. Especially when you have situations where certain individuals and teams don't like to keep conversations in threads. That's going to chat systems, which I'll get to in a minute. When you think of, you have a task, you have a question about a task, well, have that connected to that task. And I think Trello has ways where you can nest out multiple conversations where it can get kind of messy. And I think it almost enables users to get messy like that, which may be good for certain things. There may be an option to remove that in Trello. I'm not sure. And I want my bias to come off too much as complete arrogance and understanding the product. I haven't used it in years. But that was what I remember to be the reason I went to Taiga instead of Trello in a lot of projects. Recently, I found another one that was in Softaculous, Instant Installer. Clicking around. It's called Kanboard. It's a very lightweight web application you can install on a server. All it needs is PHP. It's not the most elegant looking thing, but it doesn't need to be. It's straightforward. It's to the point. It's easy to understand. I had fun learning how it did things. And it's got a long list of plugins that I haven't played with yet. But it is fun. I enjoyed messing with it. I could see myself using that. Taiga, you can use their web application, I think Taiga.io. But they also have paid tiers as well. I'm not sure how they changed it. Many products, they realize how awesome they are, and they take more out of the free version. I used to be able to do a lot in Taiga. I don't think you can do a lot of that stuff anymore. I'm not sure. But it was interesting being able to play with Kanboard and think about what I liked about Taiga. And I didn't have any issues with Kanboard. I thought it was really fun. I'm pretty sure any issues that I may have had that I could have with the way it would look, I don't, because it just works. That's enough for me. But if you were the type that wanted something that was a little more elegant looking, you can always play with the CSS. It's open source. It doesn't have too many. The only dependency it has is PHP. And installing PHP, if you don't have it on a server, isn't hard. You can install it on your PC if you want, and have it up there. So that's something for people who are doing agile project management, need ways to visualize the task progress. Kanboard. And yes, you can install it from their website. You don't have to have Softaculous. Softaculous is just the aggregator. But it is an easy way to find new software that you can use. So going back to, I talked about threads. That brought me to chat systems. I learned about Mattermost a couple years ago, and I liked it. I liked it as an alternative to Slack. I know there are times where that gets a little annoying to say, an alternative to this proprietary software. But it does scratch that itch. It scratches that itch. Mattermost, and they even have a cloud version now that they're working on. So at this point in time, soon you won't have to install Mattermost to use it. You just create an account. And I think that's going to be a game changer because they have a lot of plugins. They have a lot of options in there that Slack has. I can't think of anything that Mattermost has. I can't think of anything that Mattermost doesn't have that Slack does, other than maybe the reputation, of being known industry-wide and being trusted, and plugins. But Mattermost has a lot of plugins. I played with a lot of them. The other ones I knew about were Zulip, which you can also install or use on their website. Rocket.Chat. I haven't played with that one yet. All I know about Rocketchat is it requires MongoDB instead of MySQL or MariaDB. But I haven't used it yet. I've looked at pictures of it. It looks pretty. Whatever. And then I found braidchat. Braid, so braiding your hair, and chat, braidchat. And braidchat was similar to Zulip, that's why I mentioned those two. So Zulip and braidchat, they have a way of setting every message to be part of a conversation. It has to be part of a conversation, or you have to deliberately choose to create a new conversation. So Slack, Mattermost, you can type something in the channel and then someone can click on the button to answer in the thread. Many people don't do that. And I've seen this in multiple situations. Many people will respond directly in the channel. So therefore, everyone in the channel gets notified. However, if somebody does say they're going to do the right thing and respond in the thread of that initial question, now you got a little bit of confusion there because many people are being lazy because it's easier, user experience. It's easier to respond directly in the channel than it is to click a button and respond in the thread related that's directly connected to the initial question. Zulip and braidchat answer that by creating channels, and then you have topics within the channel. So if you're going to say something, especially in Zulip, you say something, it's going to ask you, where is this going? You have to choose. You have to choose a pre-existing topic within the channel, or you have to explicitly create a new topic. You can start being in the middle of typing something in, and they'll say, well, this topic has the same word or the same letters. So it helps keep the conversation flowing in an easier way, and it encourages the user to do that. And instead of letting the user choose that, look, you can respond in the thread, sure, by clicking the button, but it's easy to just type in the chat. And braidchat is very quiet. I found it on accident, but it looks pretty interesting. I haven't installed it and played with it yet, but if you go to their website, you can create a account for them and test stuff, and see how the workflow is, because it is different. It is different, but I think that's a thing that even Mattermost would do good to try to find a way to integrate, if they haven't already, with a plugin. That could be awesome. That could be something to make lives a lot easier, make conversations a lot easier to maintain. I'm going to talk about analytics for a minute. I love Matomo Analytics. I probably shouldn't say that like that. I really like Matomo Analytics. I like the web application, formerly Piwik, or Matomo, Matomo. I think it's matomo.org, but again, look it up. Don't just go to the website. Don't just try to go straight to the website. I like it. I like all the plugins. I like how easy it is to use. Within the last, I think sometime within the last year, 2020 or 2019, I don't remember, they created a plugin that has all of the features of Matomo Analytics, the standalone application, inside of the plugin. So now, if you have WordPress, you don't have to install Matomo on its own and then integrate it with some plugin into WordPress, and then have to, look at basic analytics in WordPress and click a button to log into Matomo Analytics on a standalone app. Now the plugin has everything in there. That's their official plugin, because the integration plugin wasn't theirs. They recommend it if you have a pre-existing standalone application, and I'm pretty sure that has to do with the fact that it can be a huge pain in the butt trying to import pre-existing analytics into a new installation. I tried it, and I don't know what I got, but I definitely didn't get what I was looking for. I didn't get the answers. I didn't get information. I got a dumpster fire. But now you can install the official Matomo Analytics plugin, and everything is in that plugin. All the options are in your WordPress dashboard, and you click a button that goes, it connects WordPress users, as in the users you created in your WordPress website. It connects them to Matomo roles. So can they view analytics? Can they access it? Can they do certain things in there? And it is legit. It is awesome. I think it looks great. I just wanted to say that. That's one of the, because, talking about open source things I played with during the year, that was one of the most interesting things I saw. I was enjoying being able to tinker around with that and seeing how solid that plugin was. And then I got curious about Mixpanel again, about how to integrate that with WordPress. I think I did it years ago, and there was it wasn't old then, but there was a plugin for integrating Mixpanel into WordPress. That same plugin, I think, still exists. The problem is it hasn't been updated since then. It hasn't been updated since I last connected it, probably. But there's a way that you can just take the code that the plugin is using, and then you can just insert it and edit it your own, because it's JavaScript. You can edit it on your own and put it in the WordPress website a better way with I forgot what it's called. It's another plugin. The Insert Headers and Footers plugin, I think it's called. Yeah. Because you can use the Insert Headers and Footers plugin to add code, add JavaScript. Yeah, add scripts to the header, body, and footer sections. And you can just take the SDK, the JavaScript SDK from your Mixpanel account that has your token ID and all that other stuff. You can throw that in the header section, and then you can take the JavaScript, the script that old Mixpanel plugin uses, and you can put that in the body section. And of course, you can edit it however you want. And you basically done what the old plugin does. except for do certain things specific to each page. But it'll do the job for basic analytics. How you would do things for specific pages, I don't know. But I thought that was really interesting and worth pointing out for people who are interested in Mixpanel, for all of the stuff that it does. And that's just something to keep in mind. Mixpanel isn't open source, but WordPress is. And it's analytics. It's I don't want to say alternative to Matomo and Google Analytics. I want to say another option. It's Mixpanel. The way from what I've read about it, it's Mixpanel is more about learning about what people are doing versus a lot of, the Matomo and Google Analytics, even Clicky. Yeah, I talked about Clicky a few years ago and something else. Yep, Clicky and Open Web Analytics. A lot of those are about how do people get to your site. Mixpanel is about what do they do once they're on the site. And that's what the focus is, and that's why there's such a huge focus on the JavaScript. The scripting for how it analyzes and pulls data from those actions from users. I'm not a big fan of being so easily tracked, but at the same time, it's good to understand how these things work so that you understand how your actions could be recorded for other reasons. It's just good to understand that stuff. And then you can use of course, you can always use your uBlock and AdBlock and what's the other one? NoScript. It's another one. Privacy Badger. You can use those browser extensions to help protect yourself. But you still got to keep in mind some of that stuff. It doesn't get everything. And sometimes the best option is just to see what the website is using and not use it at all if you can. But just information for you. That's all I have for 2020. And that's all I have for music production, cybersecurity, and Linux and open source software. Again, if you have questions about anything, put them in the comments below. If you had questions about anything I said, or comments or advice on anything I had said, anything you want to add to it, I try to be quick to respond to YouTube comments once I see them, just because you take the time to respond. The least I can do is show some appreciation for you saying something, especially if you have feedback. It's one thing for someone to say they don't like something. That doesn't do any good. You don't tell someone, you don't care to tell them why, and it's not constructive. Constructive criticism is welcome, but it's got to be constructive. So I hope everyone's doing great things. If you are, continue. If not, make it happen. Take care.